Hey Mo,
Hey, Ricky.
how are you?
I am magical. And
The
guess what?
doctor is in. And you're in my
Yay.
favorite, one of my favorite places in the world.
I am. It's not an easy place to get to. Hanover, New
No,
Hampshire, home of the illustrious, right? Historic and noteworthy
Dartmouth
Dartmouth College.
College. I found this great, one of my alums, friends found this great picture of my dad and a bunch of his friends. I'll send it to you. Maybe I'll try to show it on the Zoom. But it's my dad, he started the Black Alumni Foundation Association like years ago. We had like the 50th anniversary last year. So
Oh, wow.
that green blood stays in your body forever. It's like a thing, like Aaliyah, my dad, me, and my two daughters all went to Dartmouth. So we have
Uh,
this great guest today, and she is amazing.
hmm
And she's going to talk to us about Pilates and breast cancer
I love
and
that.
how to recover from all these horrible things that we have to do to our body.
Yeah,
So
and
she,
speaking of things that get passed on, right? Like why can't this be one of those things that gets passed on and that lives in our body and lives in our DNA? And it's the fact that movement, that fitness, that wellness is our birthright. It's our inheritance. And I feel
yeah.
like so many of us, people of color, but also cancer patients, feel like it's not for them anymore. Like it's something I might have once been able to do, but I don't really know, how I'm gonna get those things done. So it's just awesome to be able to show it, to discuss how it can happen, how to build up, how to ramp up, how to modify, why it's important, and just what is it? Because Pilates took the world by storm. What, probably 15 years ago, maybe longer.
Well, it's been around honestly since the late 1920s is when Joseph Pilates actually created the work. Um,
Wow, wow.
yeah, and so
Yeah.
he opened the first studio in New York City, and so since the 40s, people have been doing Pilates in some way, shape, or form, and it got popularized initially because all the uh, famous choreographers sent their injured dancers to Joseph Pilates to fix. And so it really does have
Wow.
healing, rehabilitative, corrective foundation at its core. That's what it is corrective and rehabilitative movement for your body.
Wow. And I didn't give her a proper introduction. So Aaliyah Hatcher, and she's not only an amazing, athlete and fitness person, but she is an incredible entrepreneur, Black woman entrepreneur.
Hmm.
She's been in business for 12 years, celebrating their 12th anniversary in Rockville, Maryland, a suburb of DC. And she's a badass. She's part of our badass club that we always bring to the table. And but she's got some great tips for us. And Pilates, I've never really done it, but it's something I want to try just for the stretching of it, because I don't really like yoga. She tells me it's very different. But I think she can help. And I remember, those exercises where try to put your hands up the wall after the mastectomy and like all the stretching that we had to do after mastectomies. And it was pretty painful and not very fun. And you didn't really want to do it. And I think she's got some tips to help us figure out how to recover better from surgery, but also just for survivorship, right? What a great thing to make yourself feel good for survivorship, right?
Wow. Well, Leah, let's start with your why. We want to hear
Yeah,
how did you
yeah.
get started, get involved in this, and what's your connection to it and cancer and just why this?
Well, like Ricky said, I've had my Pilates studio for 12 years, and we do everything related to Pilates. We work with people of all ages, ability, body types, fitness levels, and we do Pilates for total body conditioning, which you would maybe call the more fitness aspect of it, but we also do a lot of pain relief and rehabilitative work. And so that's always been a primary part of my business. And I and my family, my mom is actually a breast cancer survivor, and that may have been one of the initial pieces that got me more focused on the breast cancer recovery piece. And back in 2010, I actually did a training and certification called the Pink Ribbon Program, and it's a Pilates-based program that's designed specifically for breast cancer recovery. And I really just wanted to learn more about the specific issues and needs that people who are recovering from breast cancer have. Because again, when I teach, particularly for pain relief and rehabilitation, I teach according to whatever that individual needs and what I'm seeing in their movement, in their bodies, what they're telling me, what they're experiencing. But I really wanted to educate myself on the specifics of breast cancer recovery. That training was a really great foundation for my learning, and I integrated all of that knowledge and continued to develop it over the years into having a really good arsenal and understanding, I think, of the types of movements that I can do, how I can use the Pilates method, the equipment, the springs, and all of my knowledge to help the people who come to me, coming through breast cancer. We see people, sometimes they're still in treatment and recovery. We see sometimes people who are a couple of years out and realize that they haven't gotten full range of motion back in parts of their body, specifically tightness in the chest, poor mobility in the shoulders, lack of core strength, just all sorts of things. And so, I really appreciate having that knowledge to be able to help people.
What about lymphedema and neuropathy? Do you ever hear about that? That's something that we always hear about, and it gets worse over time sometimes,
And that was one of the specific things we learned about in our training. And before that training in 2010, I didn't know a whole lot about lymphedema. But what's nice about the Pilates work and the equipment is that it's spring tension based. So I like to show people the springs. So these are the springs, different resistances and levels that are on all the equipment. And what's nice about the springs is that they're adaptable. So this spring is actual resistance training. So it's like lifting weights, but it's better than lifting weights. And I think when it comes to lymphedema, what I learned is that you don't want to put too much weight into someone's body. You don't want to do anything that's going to constrict the flow of the lymphatic fluid. And so with the springs, you can give someone resistance, but it's not going to overtax the muscles. It's not going to create blockages. A lot of our work, we're really working with a lot of breath, a lot of fluidity in our movement. There's no holding. It's really the opposite of holding postures. We don't want people to create, we don't want to create tension in people's bodies. So that's one of the common things people ask me is, what is it like yoga? And it really isn't like yoga. Yoga is great in and of itself, but it's a very different thing. And one thing that's different is in yoga, you have postures, you hold postures. In Pilates, we don't hold. We're moving people through their bodies. We're keeping the fluidity, we're keeping movement, because when you hold, you tend to build tension. And so we want people to come in, move their bodies in positions that they normally couldn't get into. And that's what the springs allow. You attach springs to people's legs, and the springs help hold up their legs. They can move their legs in big ranges of motion on the equipment that they'd never be able to do if they were just laying on a floor and moving their legs themselves. You can strengthen the upper body. So again, we can take this spring, and this has a handle attached to it. So on a piece of equipment, if someone's holding that spring and they pull against it, you can see here, I'm working my arm muscles, but that spring resistance, the way these springs are designed, that spring resistance goes all the way up through my arm, all the way to the core, to the center of my body. And that's how we teach Pilates, is there really is a fundamental focus on the core, meaning the center of your body. So all of the movements start at the center and move outward. So even if I'm giving you something to strengthen your arms or strengthen your shoulders, I'm going to make sure that you're stable and supported at the center of your body. And then we use the appropriate muscles to move the arms or move the legs. Your muscles work much better when when your limbs are attached to something that's stable, that you're in control of. And that's why core strength and core stability is so important.
Wow.
My little mind is blown over here because, the yoga helped me as a surgical resident to learn how to rest in uncomfortable positions. right? Because sometimes you'd have to be uncomfortable for hours and hours and hours at a time. And there's a lesson there in trying to figure out how to give your body rest even though you might not be comfortable. And what you're saying to me is just blowing my mind, because it's not about the holding and the keeping of tension, but the releasing of tension that I think is
Yeah.
so important. How do people know which one is right for them? How is it, what are some of the indicators for people who might be trying to figure out, maybe it's not either or, but if they're looking at getting involved into either yoga or Pilates, how can they know what might be best for them?
So this is what I say. I say that all movement that's safe is good movement, because I just want people to move their bodies. I think I told Ricky this before. If your body stops moving, if you stop moving your body stops moving you. So the most important thing is movement. You know, I'm a Pilates teacher, and I really know and understand the benefits of Pilates. And I feel like Pilates addresses the whole body. And I do two things. I do Pilates and then I do some cardio. The only thing that I don't get from Pilates literally is cardiovascular work to get the heart rate up to that high level. Other than that, I get my strengthening, I get my flexibility work, I get mobility, balance, coordination. I mean, there's a lot of very specific balance work that we do on something called the Pilates chair, where we're standing in some exercises on one leg and pumping a paddle up and down that's spring loaded. So it really addresses every single part of the body in a way that, in my experience, I haven't experienced that in any other form of movement. I grew up dancing from age 5. I ran track all through high school. I did martial arts, you know, all the way up to, you know, right up to black belt, and all those things were wonderful. But this is like the thing you do that allows you to do all the other things you want to do. So Pilates is about conditioning your body so you can, if there's a sport you want to go do, you can do it, but then you come back and you balance out your muscles. If you want to go on hikes, you can do it and not end up in pain and not end up with some problem because you didn't have the strength to carry the pack the whole way. So Pilates allows you to live life. You know, it's not specific to doing this one thing. I'm not all that interested in just doing good Pilates for the sake of it. I want to do Pilates and I teach Pilates so people can enjoy life and feel really good in their bodies.
Wow. That sounds good. I want to do a class right now.
That does sound amazing.
I
Yeah,
know.
because you know, we hurt our backs just carrying groceries in the house, right? And we start these fitness revolutions on and off and off and on again, and we do it until we get that cramp, until we get that back spasm, until something happens. And I heard you say, and I put it in the chat, doing this thing, Pilates, allows you to do all the other things that you want to do with your body.
That's
And
right.
that's powerful.
I really think of it as maintenance, care, and body conditioning. So, you know, if you got a new car, even if you have an old car, you're going to take it in for regular oil changes. You've got your house, there are all sorts of things. You maintain your roof, your HVAC, you don't want anything breaking down. It's a catastrophe. But here we have this vessel, we only get one. I think we really have to put the time and the care into taking care of this. And things like something like breast cancer happens, we have no control over it. But the nice thing about Pilates is it gives you some amount of control over your body. And actually, Joseph Pilates never called it Pilates. He called it contrology. And he developed it because it was really a method and a philosophy of taking care of the body and also trying to address a lot of things that were happening in modern society that were causing a lot of sort of ailments with people. People even in that time were starting to become more sedentary. There was a lot more pollution. So he was really a man ahead of his time. And what contrology is really empowerment. It's really saying, you having knowledge about your body and your movement, how it works, how yours specifically works, and things you can do if something's not feeling right, things you can do regularly as preventative body work, like that gives you so much power and control. So when something as terrible as breast cancer happens, you have the resources and the facility to get on the floor, even if you don't have a Pilates studio to go to, and do a certain set of exercises, explore your movement in your body if you know. And then if you have access to a Pilates studio and a knowledgeable teacher, there's so much that, you know, we can do. I was thinking about, as I was preparing for our talk, like all of the things that come into play with breast cancer survivors. You know, you go into what type of surgery they had, and how extensive that surgery is or isn't, plays a lot into everything from tightness to scar tissue, to it's a combination of things are tight, but also things can become unstable. One of the common things I see is shoulder girdle instability. So depending on what type of surgery, and I'm sure you could really give me some more information on this, Dr. Gary, is, you know, when I did my initial training, learning about some of the surgeries they're taking in reconstruction could be taking part of the abdominals. So now you compromise your core, your abdominal muscles. They could be taking part of the lat muscle in your back. And so if reconstruction involves removing other muscles or parts of your body, then you really have to then go back into the body and compensate for what you've lost. So when I've worked with clients who've had certain areas that have been removed for reconstruction, we've got to go in and say, you don't have this. Now we're going to build extra support here or there to make up for that. And you really can do that. You really can get that specific if you know.
I love that you brought that up, because, you know, when patients get the deep flap surgery, right, the tummy tuck, essentially, we have gone away from, as much as possible, using the muscles, the six-pack muscles. We use the fat over top when we can, but it puts you at higher risk for hernias. And the need to stabilize that core even more, so that you don't mess around and, you know, start doing push-ups and doing sit-ups and end up with a hernia is it's even more important. And I don't think that patients are told that enough. They're told that, you know, you get to spare your muscle and we use your fat and you get a tummy tuck. But with that tummy tuck, you know, comes weaker rectus abdominal muscles. And so I think that, you know, offering people a way to, one, before surgery, begin to strengthen those muscles. I call it prehab. I send my patients to prehab. And then two, after surgery, when they're medically stable, to really start looking at how to get that core right is so important. And the posture after mastectomy changes, right? You don't realize that chest wall, everything kind of comes in, those shoulders, you know, as you said, shoulder girdle comes in, and you really have to work to make sure you open that back up again. And so it's so important, exercises that highlight that.
Because it's your instinct is to kind of protect yourself, if I remember correctly. Like, it's like you're always wanting, like I don't know, like, you know, trying to, you know, cover up your boobs, or like try to like protect them, you know. And so you don't, to go here and here is like unusual. But I was with our breastie Nicole last week and at AARCR, and she's 3 years out. It's 3 years since surgery, and she can't lift her arm past here.
Yeah.
She had radiation, didn't she?
Surgery,
Muscles that, radiation. I tell patients, like, microwaving the muscle, you know, and that muscle gets tough. Like if you microwave meat, you know how it gets tough in the microwave, so do our muscles. And it's a constant battle to really keep that muscle stretched out, and ways to do that are gentle are so important.
Yeah, she's got 2 babies and she can barely pick them up. She can't, you know, her range of motion in this arm is out of commission. Because I told her about you, so she's hoping she's watching today. And
So there's so many things, and just the things you all just said, when I think about, it's so interesting to hear what you describe as microwaving the muscles and how that changes the actual texture of the muscle. Because again, going back to the springs, and I always come back to that because that's so specific and unique to Pilates. Springs are known for creating long, lean muscle. So if you think about going to the gym and picking up, you know, a dumbbell, right, and doing this, when you use a traditional weight like this, it builds up muscle in a very specific spot. So you get a big bicep because you're pumping. When you are pulling against a spring in Pilates, the spring doesn't pull in one spot. Again, it goes through everything. So it creates long, lean muscle. So when you're working through spring on Pilates equipment, it's like doing this to your muscles over and over again to make them more sinewy, to make them longer, to kind of smooth things out. One of the things that, you know, with Pilates, you're also very hands-on with people as you're what we call cueing them or adjusting them. And very often I literally can feel people's, you know, their tissue, whether it's their muscle or their fascia, their connective tissue. And oftentimes you feel a gristly feeling to the tissue, which is not normal. And so one of the things that you're trying to get with your Pilates movement, as you're getting that nice sinewy kind of elasticity in the muscle, is to smooth that out. So your tissue is, healthy tissue isn't knotty and gristly. It should be smooth and fluid. And then I also thought about when you were talking about, Dr. Gary, the chest wall tightening up and everything kind of caving in. That's certainly, we see that happening to people in general from things like bad posture. But when it comes to something like surgery, this is a common thing we do. And I'll just kind of, to illustrate, kind of take this off so you can see when that's happening and people are tightened and pulled in here. What you've got to do is two things. You got to do movements that are going to stretch open the chest and the front of the shoulder. So across the chest wall, the pec muscles. But you also, and this is what people miss, you have to strengthen the back of the shoulder and the upper back. So upper back and back of shoulder strengthening is key. If all you do is stretch this, it's still not going to open and hold your chest open, because you have to have strength and build strength in the back of the body, right? So if I kind of come here, you need that strength to keep this open. So it's a working
I
of
feel it.
You feel that?
I'm trying to feel it. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's you know, a lot of things we do. There's a whole series of exercises. They show up on different parts of equipment, something called chest expansion, in fact. And so if I were doing a version here, and again, you have to kind of imagine the springs because we're not on equipment, but I would be holding on to, say, a handle like this, right? And I would be pulling, and I would be cueing someone to use the muscles in the back of the shoulder, stabilize the shoulder blades into the back, and then pull back using that shoulder and that tricep. So that stretches this and it strengthens that. And that shows up in many different ways, shapes, and forms and positions. And if you work that consistently, stretching the front, strengthening the back, that's how you gradually turn this over time into this, right?
Whoever thought, did you ever think about the muscles in your shoulders, on the back of your shoulders? No, I didn't. And I work out a lot.
You know what? Only because I'm in medicine. If I weren't, I wouldn't. And I
Yeah.
tell my patients sometimes leaning into a doorway and doing those types of things, if that's all you got, you know, try to, it helps. But I love the way in which you're describing this
Yeah.
is very intentional and very smooth and very, like I said, I guess the word is gentle, which I love for cancer patients, because people always think, oh, it's too harsh, it's going to hurt too much, it's too much for me. And this is not that.
Yeah, absolutely not.
And
Yeah.
I love the word fluid, how you mean it's fluid and not creating tension. Because when I think about exercise, I do think about creating tension. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no pain, no gain, right? All of it
Right,
is so
right,
much,
right,
breaking down muscle and
right,
pumping
right,
iron, and
right.
it has this aggressive language to it that, yeah, it can be a little off-putting.
Yeah, yeah. You want to show us some stuff or
Yeah. So
Yeah, and what's in the room too?
I know, like what you got in
I
there?
know, I wish I could, kind of take you over to all of that, but I can describe a few of the things. I'll show you first some things that are kind of more mat-based that,
Yeah, I'm gonna pin you so people can see a bigger you.
so we're talking about tightness in the chest and shoulders. Something you can do at home that's effective in opening that up. So I just got a foam roller here. I'm gonna sit on the front end and lay back. And just doing arm circles is a nice way to open that up. So I'm actually stabilizing my shoulder blades into my back, and that gives me a nice range of motion. I'm just letting gravity stretch me as I go around in these circles. So we just call these supine arm circles, which just means arm circles laying on your back. And because I'm lifted up on a roller, it gives me a bigger range of motion. So you can see how, the chest is opening, the front of the shoulders opening, all the way down the arm through the bicep. And then you would reverse that direction. And again, breath is key in Pilates. The breathing and the movement go together. So I'm just inhaling through my nose and exhaling through the mouth. Inhaling and exhaling. So that's just simple arm circles. And then another movement I like to do, particularly, again, chest and shoulder tightness, is these side lying arm circles. So I'm laying on my side. I've got both arms in front. I've actually got one hand stacked on top of the other. And then I kind of I'm looking at my top hand and I'm following it all the way around. So if you watch, my spine is rotating. So this is good sort of spiral mobility as I follow my hand around to the other side and back over my body and then go again. So I'm literally looking through the entire circle. Again, it's creating this twist in my spine. And then you can reverse the direction. Again, it's also, again, creating an opening across the chest, the front of the shoulder, down the arm. And these things just, feel good. And that's the point, the movement. The nice thing about Pilates is it actually feels good. When you get into the springs, especially, it's fun, it's interesting. It's not as, a lot of people come to us from physical therapy and PTs will, refer and send their clients to us. And one of the things they say is they enjoy coming to the sessions. It's very different than the experience they have in PT, which is, more sort of rote things that you do over and over, very simplistic movements. So if people enjoy it, they're more likely to continue to do it. So they say they look forward to that. Now, I'm going to show you something a little more core based. So
This is great, Aaliyah. I
when
feel like I should be doing it with you though. I feel like pretty lame over here.
you can get on your mat over there. So there's roll backs or roll downs show up all over the Pilates repertoire. So a very simple roll back would be, we talk about the pelvis a lot in Pilates because this is kind of like the center of the body along with the spine. So we teach someone to curl the pelvis under by engaging the low abs, right? You see me scooping them in, and then tilting the sit bones under. So I'm rounding my spine. I keep pulling in here, and I would have someone roll back as long as they can keep the curl. I don't want them to straighten their backs because then they're using their back muscles and not their abdominals. I want the belly deep. I want the sit bones and the tailbone curled under. And you roll to where you can roll with control, and then you roll it up. Now, over time, so I'm breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. You want to have someone help someone build up the strength to be able to roll the spine and control it bone by bone. We call this spinal articulation. And then pull in the upper abdominals and peel the spine off the mat and bend forward. It looks very simple. It requires a significant amount of abdominal strength to control that movement. So what people traditionally do with rolling down and rolling up is, okay, I'm in control, I'm in control, uh-oh.
Yep, I was just gonna ask you that, because
So,
that's me.
so the key is the control. And Pilates has the focus is on control, precision of movement. It's not how fast can I do it? How many times can I do it? You know, it's not manic, it's very controlled along with your breath. And then you start adding on difficulty. So once someone can roll down, roll up, control it, you roll, you hold, and then you rotate. So now I'm using my obliques as I twist. I come back to center. And again, I'm breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. And you can see with the wrinkles in my shirt, I always say the wrinkles kind of show what your muscle fibers are doing. So as I'm twisting, you can see my obliques are kind of pulling my spine around, and then I roll up. So that's a roll back. And again, you can start straightening legs and step that up or down in difficulty. And then another really good one that I like for just building transverse abdominal strength, really your abdominal corset and your back muscles, is something called a short box series. So this is classically done on the Pilates Reformer, but you can do it sitting on any box. If you were at home, if you had like an ottoman, you could sit on that. And I'm just taking this bar and bringing my arms up overhead. So the key here is my pelvis and spine are in what we call a neutral position, meaning this is the most stable and supported position. I should be right up on my sit bones, have a little bit of an arch here in the low spine, a little bit of an arch here in the neck. My job is to keep this whole spinal structure stable as it is and lifted and tilted and lift it back up. What I don't want to happen is that, right? Because now my abs are not
Yep, that's me.
stabilizing me, right? If my abs are engaged,
That's
then I
me.
hold my spine stable. If my abs start giving way, my back arches. So it's about control. So I'm actually picking up my abs inside of me. I'm supporting and stabilizing my spine from the front using my abdominals, and then I'm lifting the spine back up. That can start off super small, a ½ inch, and then little by little, you go farther and farther back, and that is building more and more core strength. So those are kind of like some foundational movements that, you know, we can see on the mat. When it comes to the things we can do on the equipment, so Pilates, there's over 500 exercises if we just take the foundational exercises on mat and on equipment. And then I can modify and vary any movement, any exercise for any individual client. So what I really love about it is that it's so adaptable. You know, I can tailor it to whatever the client needs. I can do a movement from the most basic and slowly build someone's strength and flexibility and mobility up in level. But with the equipment, you know, there's hundreds of things that I would be able to do with the springs. When I think about something like, again, the chest and the shoulder work, there's a whole series of work on springs that is called the rotator cuff series, which is about strengthening the rotator cuff muscles of the shoulder. There are a whole lot of push through exercises where you're laying on the Cadillac back there and you're holding a bar that's attached to a spring and you're pushing that spring-loaded bar through, which seems simple, but again, if you have chest and shoulder tightness and shoulder instability, then you really have to work slowly with someone to train that, because what's happening is the spring is providing resistance. So you're literally breaking down the mechanics of someone who may be extremely tight and constricted here and stabilizing the shoulder, guiding them through the external rotation of their arm bone in the socket, and then helping them push through. They may only be able to get here. They may not even be able to straighten their arm over the head, like as you're describing your friend. But you know, it's gradual. They work through the springs, they come back. You go again, you're turning out, you're reaching. And again, the whole time I'm coaching, because what I don't want is, I need to straighten my arm, so I'm going to do this. I don't want the shoulder
Down the line, yeah.
I want that shoulder blade to stay stable. And then we work on the flexibility that we need to gain in the muscles to eventually get more and more range of motion over time.
Wow.
Wow.
All I know is if you are just joining us, we're talking about Pilates, and if you look at this woman's arms,
I was going to
that
say, I
speaks
want the arms. I was about to say
volumes,
the same
first
thing.
of all.
I want the arms. Wow.
Second of all, we're talking about movement and how the movements of Pilates are different than, say, yoga, and different than typical, I guess, calisthenic exercises and other things you might do. And we got a couple questions in the chat. And the first one is, someone said they can no longer sit on the floor. And I heard you mention an ottoman. So there's some modifications that people can do for things at home?
Yeah. So anything, definitely sitting on, this is actually a piece of Pilates equipment. It's called the short box. And so any kind of box or ottoman, that's a good thing to have. Also for people who are tight in their hamstrings or tight in their hip flexors, I generally elevate them. So, you know, heck, you could even take a stack of books. Nobody has phone books anymore, but you know, somehow
Well, we remember them.
I know.
remember them and stack them up. So yeah, you can always elevate yourself. And not only is that good, you know, even if you can't sit on the floor, but a lot of people, if you are sitting on the floor, I'm just going to move this out of the way. And a lot of us have tight hamstrings, tightness in the low back. What'll happen is people are sitting on the floor and they're like this, and they actually can't get up, right? Because of that tightness. It's better to either sit on a box, right? Because the moment we elevate you, it takes some of the pressure off of that tightness. You can then sit up on your sit bones. Your ability to sit on your sit bones and be upright and neutral is really key. So neutral probably doesn't mean anything to anybody who's not familiar with Pilates, but it really is when we should be sitting and standing in neutral. We should not be sitting like we sit in a chair. So imagine a chair back. This is how people sit. And so now the low back,
That is, yep.
the arch that we should naturally have there is flat, or even worse, rounded. So you're stretching out your lumbar arch that you should have, right? And then also look at what happens to my chest and my shoulders.
Right.
And you then shift your position so you're sitting on top of your sit bones and not behind them.
Oh,
See how my posture completely changes?
yeah.
Right? So again, if your hamstrings are tight and you can't get up on the sit bones, simply bend the knees a little bit. Right now I'm able to sit up on the sit bones. One of the simple little things I do, I have in my video, that Body 101 transformation, like some 5 essential movements you should do every day. And one of those things is I call rocking horse, where you literally just rock back and forth on your sit bones, right? Sit bones are I'm going to show you a little, always keep a skeleton with me. So here's the pelvis. The sit bones are the little bony protrusions, 2 of them that we have at the bottom of the pelvis.
So your butt bones.
Yeah, I'm sitting right on top of mine. So that's the neutral is sitting right on top. So rocking horse is arching the pelvis. So now I rock and arch to the front of the sit bones, and then curling the pelvis where I rock to the back of the sit bones. And that's just a really good movement for training and conditioning muscles around the pelvis and the low spine. So when you do that over and over again, it gets easier to then sit right up on top of those sit bones in neutral. So again, neutral, you're on your sit bones, you have a little arch in your low spine, not excessive, and you have a little arch in your neck. And then I have people do, I say, walking sit bones. So I'm literally picking up one sit bone, putting it down.
And see, that's easy to do. You can be watching Family Feud and do that. Like this is
right.
because somebody else asked in the chat, why is Pilates so expensive?
Yeah. But I'm laughing at Carol Ann. Says I'm probably too far gone.
No, you're not too far gone.
You're not.
You're never too far gone. That's one thing I know for sure. So yeah, this is to your point. This is something, the walking sit bones, that I have in another workshop video that's called Healthy and Well Working from Home. So when everybody started working from home, you can't imagine the catastrophe of back pain, neck pain, shoulder pain. So I did.
My gosh, so bad.
Yeah, I did a workshop specifically on that. And these are things that I would tell them, you can do this. You can be on a Zoom meeting and no one has to know you're walking your sit bones. You're doing your rocking horse, which is a really good back saver, right? Just doing that. No one's going to know you're doing that. Another thing, rolling out your feet on balls. So these are all some things that, I talked to Ricky about this before. During the pandemic, when we were completely shut down, over the course of those 3 months, I was doing these live virtual workshops that I streamed on Zoom. And it was everything from, essential information for alleviating back pain, abdominal work, again, working from home and how to deal with all the sitting and how we should be sitting and things you can do to keep your body healthy during that time. Movements we should all be doing every day, like literally 5 things you get, sit, stand, and do that are simple. And so when I did all of those workshops, it was 12 workshops. I put them into a series that you can stream. So those are some things that if you don't have access to a studio or you're not in the local area, that you could do those and stream those online as well.
What did you call what the founder called it? Something like sounded like the word control.
Contrology. Yeah.
Contrology. Is that why? Because
it's based on control of your body, control of your
that's
movement.
such a great word to think about. You have control of your body and
Control of your body.
It seems
some
like
of these
simple.
Sorry, go ahead.
It seems like simple and peaceful, doesn't it?
And that's my next question, Ricky. Are some of these movements or principles similar to things like Tai Chi, where you kind of do these sort of slow movements?
So it's very interesting, if you look at the history and the stories of Joseph Pilates, he had a background that was so varied. He did everything from boxing to martial arts, and he studied things like Tai Chi and a lot of the Zen arts. He actually studied animal movement. He did acrobatics. So he really was a student of movement and wellness and just what should we be doing with our bodies to make them function better. So he studied a real variety of things. And I think that's why the work is so comprehensive, because it wasn't just like approaching it from one standpoint. So you do get that influence of things from martial arts or from dance or from acrobatics or, all of those things. And there's definitely a calisthenics. If you look at the mat work, it has a feel of a kind of calisthenic approach, and I think that's from his boxing background.
Wow. And you can do this online. I put your offer in the comments. Can you speak to
Mhm.
it a little bit, and that will help our friend who is worried about the cost of Pilates. We have a great deal that Ali is offering us.
Yeah, and that's it. I understand the question about the cost of Pilates, and it is, it is not expensive for sure. It is not inexpensive, but what you're paying for is the equipment. If you, even if you went online, and again, there's a lot of kind of retail Pilates reformers that are sold on the market,
Mhm.
but those are expensive, and the quality of them is not even near what a piece of studio equipment is. So the equipment we have in our studio is the professional line of equipment, and it literally, it needs to be sturdy, it needs to be supportive. I really tell people, I don't advise people going out and buying a reformer online, like a metal reformer is generally what they're made out of for home, because if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not being guided and supported, you actually can hurt yourself.
Yeah.
There are a lot of movements that you're standing on the reformer, doing splits. All that stuff is wonderful. You can do movements you'd never be able to do, but you can also fall off the equipment.
What's
So
a reformer?
Yeah, I was gonna say, what's a reformer?
yes, so equipment here, and I can slide it a little bit here so you can see this piece of
I wouldn't
equipment.
even know what to do with that in my house.
I
right?
know, and so most people who decide they're gonna go and get one and it comes with a manual, really, unless you have been trained, unless you are either a trained Pilates teacher or you've been doing Pilates and had developed a repertoire for many years and you really understand the movement and the work, this is not a piece of equipment to just have for home. So, we're doing everything from standing on top of it. I've got springs here. Again, this is where I'm adjusting springs and the carriage moves,
Oh, wow.
right?
Whoa, look at that.
Leg up in the air,
Oh,
I'm pushing there. I might do what we call
do
the
not try this at home.
Mm-mm. Mess around and lose an eye. Don't do it.
So this is long stretch, which is basically a plank, a moving plank against spring resistance.
Oh,
So
that's
it requires
incredible.
a lot of strength and control to keep the core stable. I'm
Wow.
pushing through my heels. I'm not sinking, right? I'm holding up my center, and I'm controlling the movement of the carriage. We've got knee stretches, so all sorts of things. So the movements are very specific. You really have to learn the repertoire and build up a practice before it would be safe for somebody to work on that equipment. But again, the equipment, studio equipment, this is solid maple wool, wood, steel. This equipment is sturdy, safe. We have people of all sizes on the equipment. It's not going to break down. And so, it's expensive equipment, but it's very high quality equipment that lasts and is going to be safe for our clients to use. And you're also paying for in a studio a highly trained teacher. And that's important when if you are looking for a studio and a teacher, to really do your homework and make sure you're working with someone who is actually fully trained and certified. The reality is that someone can say, I'm a Pilates teacher and teach classes, and they might have learned Pilates watching YouTube videos, and they have absolutely no real training or credential at all. There's no license that you need to teach Pilates. All of the teachers that I hire, we're all comprehensively trained teachers. And what that means is we completed a training program that taught us everything, how to teach from the most beginner level all the way up to the most advanced work on every single piece of Pilates equipment. You don't have to do that. Someone could learn, they might take a partial course and just learn how to teach reformer up to the intermediate level. Or again, they might not take any course at all. But my training that I did years ago was over 900 hours. So that was like a full, it was like going to school, you know,
Well,
15.
your arms look the way they do.
Yeah, and so my teachers, I don't hire anyone whose training program, they have to have graduated from a program that was at least 600 hours. So you really should interview someone you're considering to be your Pilates teacher, because it's really an intimate relationship. This is somebody that's helping you with your body, that's helping you learn your body, that you have to know is going to be, it's safe for you to work with them, that they really understand movement. They understand anatomy. We studied a lot of anatomy in my training, but again, if you aren't trained or if you have a very minimal training, you don't learn anatomy. You don't learn about, you know, how the body really works. You don't learn how to make modifications and adjustments. So all of that's very important.
So basically, you can do it several ways, right? So if you don't want to go to a class, we have this access to your online class, right? So I could do it in my house by myself by watching you on a
So-
video or whatever,
So
right?
there's a few ways. So we've got the Body 101 transformation. That is a video on demand series of workshops. So you buy this whole series of 12 workshops that you have access to permanently. You can watch anytime. My studio, we also, all of our mat classes, we also stream them live through Zoom. So you can buy a mat class in studio. That same mat class, you could go online and buy the live virtual recorded version. And what that means is when that class is happening in this room, before the class, we send you the link. You can join live in Zoom, the same computer I'm looking at you, the teacher's
Very
looking.
cool, very cool.
And then we send you a recording of the class afterwards. So whether you were in class or not in class live, you get 48 hours to go back and watch the class and do the class on your own. So we do that. And we also have virtual private lessons. So those are one-on-one, again, through Zoom, where the teacher is coaching you again. You're not going to have Pilates equipment, so it would be a mat-based private lesson with one of our certified teachers.
Can you do a private lesson over Zoom?
Yes, that's exactly what that is.
Okay, that's what that is. All right, so,
You just book a virtual private lesson online and
okay,
then send you the Zoom link, 24 hours before you log in, and the teacher's sitting here where I'm sitting, and she's teaching you, asking questions, modifying everything you would do in any mat-based lesson.
so, but you won't get the benefit of the machinery until we come to the studio. So,
Yeah.
so, is there a place where we could find if the studio is reputable, or can people reach out? I mean, if you're in Iowa or Nebraska or LA, I'm sure there's all kinds of studios all around the country, but
Yeah,
what's
so I would say the one place that is kind of, there is something called the Pilates Method Alliance, which is the professional association for Pilates teachers.
the
So
Pilates, what is it called? The Pilates?
the Pilates Method Alliance.
Okay.
And again, it's not required that anybody, it's membership based, but they have, it used to be embedded in the Pilates Method Alliance, but there's now a separate certifying agency that gives a credential of the national certified Pilates teacher. So they do have a directory and a database. So if you go to the Pilates Method Alliance.org, then they have a directory of teachers that are nationally certified Pilates teachers. So what that means is they've sat and passed an exam. And to sit for that exam, they have to have come through a training program that I believe is like at least 500 hours. They have some requirements for you to sit for the exam. So that'll give you a baseline of someone who came through a comprehensive program, who sat for the exam and passed the exam. Again, that's a baseline credential. It doesn't mean that person is, one of the best teachers in the world, but I do think it's important to at least start with a credential, and that'll kind of point you in the right direction. And the other thing, like I said, is when you go online, really look through the bios of the individual teachers, and there should also, those teachers should also indicate the level of continuing education that they do. We host continuing education workshops because you have to keep learning. There are things that they were teaching in Pilates that really it was not good for the body, and now over time we've learned that. But that's the case in really any practice. The physical therapists used to have people doing things that now they know better, and so they don't teach those same things. So as a Pilates teacher, if you're really doing it to help people, then it really is your profession, and you've got to continue learning and progressing and developing.
And if you don't feel like it's right for your body, you feel like something's not right, then you just stop, right? And
That's right.
Maybe
It shouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, whenever someone says, "Oh gosh, that hurt," I always say, "Tell me what you're feeling. Explain
Right.
what." Because some people, they haven't felt certain muscles work in so long.
Hello.
In their mind, they hurt. And then when they describe, "Well, I feel this muscle and it's tightening and it's shaking," and I'll say, that's a good thing. We're in the right muscles. But should it be painful? Should something hurt? No, it shouldn't. It shouldn't hurt.
I'll add the disclaimer that you really should talk to your medical professional, especially if you're
Right.
in active treatment, right?
Yeah.
To get approved for these types of therapies. Sometimes you'll start maybe with a physical therapy assessment as a bridge to other classes and things. And I think that it's not a bad idea to have a functional assessment by PTOT before you consider a class. But do try it, do consider it. And then from an equity standpoint, I have one more question for you. I mean, how many Black Pilates instructors are there, and is there an association that you all belong to?
No, there isn't an association. I would say the level of representation is certainly quite low overall, but I can say in my studio, so there's 10 of us that are teachers, and I have 3 Black teachers in my studio. So I think it depends on the studio. I have a very diverse group of teachers. But overall, I would say, I think there are certainly more Black teachers. And there are some, groups. If you go on like Instagram, there are a lot of groups that create community through social media. So certainly there are Black teachers out there. I know of certain other studio owners and teachers in the area, but we're also in the DC metro area.
So that's a good goal for somebody, like go learn Pilates and become a teacher and help some more Black breasties with this, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly right.
I'm glad you mentioned about the getting a doctor sort of evaluation or PT, because a lot of our clients come to us again as patients out of physical therapy. And when people come in, and if they come in under the umbrella of pain relief and rehabilitation, we ask them to bring in whatever documentation they had that might help us, whether it's your initial evaluation or reevaluations from your physical therapist, any MRIs, even though we're not doctors, we're not physical therapists, but even reading an MRI summary can tell us, okay, bulging herniated discs, some disc degeneration, spinal stenosis. I mean, we have an intake form, but you would be shocked at how many times people fill out a form. And it's not until you start having that initial conversation and they'll say, "Oh, I have a fusion in my spine," and it's nowhere on the form. So the more information we have about someone's condition, the better. We also ask if someone's in physical therapy, we say, hey, can you bring in a copy of your homework sheet? What is your physical therapist having you do as homework? Because then we can design a program that's complementary and builds on what the physical therapist wants them to work on.
Right.
I also feel like it's kind of an intimate exercise program. It seems like that the teachers really, really consider the specifics of a person. It's not like when I go to a spin class, everybody's in there, you get on your bike or do your thing. It feels like you guys are sort of having this conversation while you're
Absolutely.
working the person out. And that's really, really a cool thing to do here.
It is. And I always say, I don't teach exercises, I teach individuals.
I
So
love that.
Love
I
that so much.
see someone comes in and I may have from my previous notes from the last session, oh, I want to work on this. But the first thing I say is, how's the body doing? How are you doing? Anything new happening I need to know about? And that their answers to that and their feedback throughout the session really guides the session. It determines what I'm going to do. It's not something that I've just got some plan. I'm just going to do this with you because I had it written down.
Right, writing that down.
And the beauty of our studio is even our group classes are small. So our group classes, whether on Reformer, we only take up to 6 people. So even in a group class, if I see someone that needs lighter spring, I can come over and change that. That needs to, I can look and say, you know what, bend your knees because you're not supported at your core. Bend your knees, tilt back, and I can walk over to them. You can't do that in a class of 12 people on a Reformer. And there are studios that are more kind of franchise based or, corporate, that they're packing 12, 14 people in a room because, that's what works.
They can make more money for them, right? They can make more money, right?
Standpoint. But you lose your ability to support and take care of your client and to really give them what they came to you for. So I knew when we moved into this new studio and built this out 3 years ago, that I don't care how much space I had, I would never have more than 6 people in a class because you can't teach the quality and the level that we teach with a whole bunch of people in a class.
Well, I will be there soon, Gretchen. I will be there soon. Can you tell us about your offer?
Yes. So Body 101 Drug Transformation. So it's a series of what I call 12 essential workshops for the body. And I really think of Body 101 is it's one part owner's manual for your body. So I really spend whatever the topic is, if it's dealing with back pain, I've spent the first part really talking about the body and giving people a very, very fundamental understanding of the body and movement. And then I get on the mat and walk you through exercises. And as I'm doing the exercises myself, I'm explaining kind of like what I did with you all today, talk about the sit bones. This should be curling under, your belly should be scooping in. And I'm walking you through the exercise. And so, each one is about, an hour long. And it's really the topics that I feel like are the things that when people come in, this is what people need the most help with. And I packaged that into a series of 12 workshops. So what I did was I have an offer of 10% off. So those 12 workshops are $99. So this is 10% off of that regular price. And you just use the code BREASTY10 at checkout.
That's awesome. Wow.
Awesome.
This has been, you putting in the chat, Ricky?
I put the offer in the chat and I put his email address in there. So you can.
Good.
Yeah, and if anybody has questions, definitely email us. If anybody's interested in virtual, if you're like, maybe I want to try a virtual lesson, but how does that work? Just email us, call us. I've got a full, wonderful front desk team. They can answer any questions you have. And
wow. And you know what? I feel very peaceful. I don't feel like we were like talking about sweating and working out. And I'm like, I spin. So I'm like,
nope, just getting moving your body. And it's so important. Yeah, Right. I tell my patients, even more than weight loss or weight gain is circulation, right? It's movement of those muscles and the
Right.
lymphatics, and
Yeah.
those things are so important before, during, and after your treatment. And especially if you're in ongoing treatment, and you're dealing with those
Right.
those long-term side effects of all the things you didn't really know about, like radiation. So this has been so enlightening and right in line with, National Minority Health Awareness Month. This is something that you might not have been aware of, but if you enjoyed it, please share it. Share it on your Facebook pages. Share it. We'll be on YouTube and post it. And we want you to go to the website, buy the 12-part series,
Right.
and learn about this and really get moving so that you can feel more comfortable should you choose to go to a Pilates class. So, Aaliyah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being
you.
here. And I'm going to see you soon, girl. I'm going to come over there because I want to get on the machine and I want
I
to do
love
what
it.
you did. That looks really
I gotta
great.
get my hands on you, Ricky.
I
There it
know,
is.
I'm ready.
I love it. Well, we
And
hope
if
it's
you're
been
ever in the
relatable.
area, Dr. Gary, please come down, come visit.
Yeah,
You come up to my farm and we can do
I
some
know.
classes,
Oh
and
my
we
gosh,
got to
that
get you
sounds
up here.
amazing.
So,
Yeah,
yeah, we hope it's been relatable and reliable and real. It's what we set out to do every Wednesday night here on Black Doctor. We're thankful to our sponsors and
yeah,
to the network for allowing us the platform to do it. Thankful to our viewers and those of you who are tuning in and participating in the chat. The
yeah.
doctor's in.
The doctor is in. Thank you.
Thank
Breasty
you so
love.
much.
There it
Breasty
is.
love. See you soon. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye.